Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Nate at 8 on this Friday evening. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of Nate at 8. We're going to be tracking some gorgeous weather continuing this weekend. Really, a lot of what we saw for today. If you're wondering how the weekend shapes up, a lot of what we saw today just continues the next couple of days. There's minor differences, but really a lot of the same. Plenty more sunshine, temperatures not hot, cool to warm. Got comfortable humidity levels. Really, a lot of what we saw for today continues into this weekend. The changes will come more so as we look ahead going into next week. More seasonable temperatures, tolerable humidity. That's the story for a lot of the next week. The temperatures, even today, and we'll notice it again tomorrow, a little bit below normal, but not far from seasonable temperatures. Certainly more seasonable to below normal temperatures than above normal temperatures here for a lot of the next week. And during the stretch, more tolerable humidity as well. So that's something we're going to be touching on for this edition of Nate at 8. Again, thanks so much for joining. Let us begin. And we're starting off with those temperatures across the area, which are starting to fall in the 70s. These temps are going to drop off rather quickly tonight. We do not have a warm, muggy night ahead, another cool one ahead. And we did start off with temperatures a little bit below normal, getting the average high 83. So we did end up with those highs near 80, upper 70s, but ultimately coming up short, trending a little bit below normal. And those low temperatures by tomorrow morning will likely be below normal as well, ending back in the 50s, which is what we had for this morning. So a couple mornings with those temperatures likely below normal, and same story in those afternoon highs today as well as tomorrow. During the month of August, we lose over an hour of daylight. And yes, by the end of the month, the sun will set before 8 o'clock. In fact, even by the 29th, the sun likely setting before 8 p.m. Full moon occurring not too far from now, a little over a week on the 9th is when we'll notice the full moon for your August. As you can see, average temperatures, they don't drop too much as we go through the month. Really low 80s, low 60s as we go throughout the month are your average temperatures. How'd July end? Well, it was hot. It was humid, right? Those average temperatures, 76.1. Now, interesting, if we compare this to last July, the average was 76.2. So pretty much on par. The average temperature from one July to the next, from this July and last July, and both ended up in the top 10. 10 warmest July on record this year, top 10 warmth for both Julys this year and last year. Now, in terms of what really trended, that average temperature high, this year was more the overnight lows, not so much the afternoon highs, but those overnight lows were significant. Those average lows, 67.5 degrees, the warmest on record, and that's the warmest by over a degree. That's a significant, when you're talking about statistics, that's a significant jump with from first to second in terms of the warmest on record. So, these were some really historic warm nights that we had going throughout this month. And what caused that? Well, the historic humid stretch of weather we had as well, right? That's a limiting factor to how much these temperatures have dropped off. And they often coincide, especially this time of the year, that when we're talking about some historic warm nights, we're also talking about some historically humid conditions. A lot more rain this time around compared to what we had for last year. 3.37 inches total precipitation. That's about 2.5 inches more than last July. We didn't even get an inch at the Wheeling-Ohio County Airport last July, getting over 3 inches this. So certainly a lot more rain this time around. And again, still another warm July, just like what we had for last year. But this time around is more of those overnight lows. Last year was more of those highs. We had 13 90-plus highs last July. This July, we only had 2. Oftentimes that when you're dealing with some humid conditions, it can make it hard to reach, some excessive heat into the 90s, just like it makes it hard to really drop those lows overnight as well. We're dealing with more moisture present in the atmosphere. It's harder to heat and cool those temperatures. So, that's likely a big culprit as to why we didn't get many 90-degree days. Again, only 2 throughout the entire month of July. We had 13 last July. But again, those overnight lows is what really trended that average temperature to the extent into the top 10 warmest Julys on record for the Wheeling area. Our average high last year was 88 degrees. I believe ours was a little under 85 for this July. So yes, those afternoon highs ultimately a little cooler this year compared to last year, but again, still felt awfully hot when you factored in those humid conditions and a lot of warm nights in place. So now we start August with the complete opposite. In fact, we are dealing with these dew points this evening below 50. And last time we had a dew point below 50 degrees was June 9th, almost 2 months ago. So this is a significant stretch here of some dry weather to begin August. We have not dealt with this dry of air in, again, about 2 months, almost 2 months. We have to go back to June 9th, the last time we saw those dew points drop below 50 degrees at the Wheeling County Airport. So I'm sure a lot of you felt this even last night, right? Even last night or yesterday evening at this time, probably started to feel that drop in humidity. And now, all the region dealing with much drier air in place. And again, the good news is, if you like this, a lot of the same on tap for the weekend. Of course, the question is now, when can it change, right? That's the big question now. When does it change? Well, as we look ahead going into next week, we'll start off looking at those dew points into Sunday morning, right? Because a lot of what we're seeing now just continues throughout the weekend. So we'll plot a little further ahead in the future. That way we can get into that Friday, because I think that's the time, next Friday into next Saturday. That's the time, about a week from now, when we can start to deal with those dew points climbing back to that uncomfortable, maybe unbearable range. So I think that's really the time where the humidity starts to become more excessive. But that being said, we've got a whole week. How about that? A whole week with, not refreshing air the whole time, but much more tolerable humidity levels. So we do not have to deal with the uncomfortable, unbearably humid conditions for about a week from now. So that is some great news that, a lot of this stretch here over the next week and even in the following weekend, a lot of this, the humidity much more tolerable. And like I mentioned, these temperatures fairly seasonable as well. So, while the humidity is more tolerable, not going to be dealing with any hot days. We do not look to reach near, if not in the 90s. We do not look to reach to that extent. A lot of these days, highs mid lower 80s, right on par with the average high this time of the year. And those average lows, yes, by the time we get into next week, likely pretty close to the average low as well. So fairly seasonable, more tolerable humidity levels. This is a nice stretch of weather coming our way here over the next week. And before we do see more seasonable temperatures arrive for next week, for this weekend, we are trending a little bit below normal, especially again for tomorrow afternoon. Those overnight lows certainly below normal. We got a series of some cool mornings ahead, right around the mid 50s into Saturday and Sunday morning. So if you like those cool mornings, you're in luck. A little bit warmer Monday, but I think we can string together here. We were there for this morning, and I think we can be there again over the next 3 mornings. That's another statistic I need to look up. Just thought of it. The last time we dealt with, I think we have a chance here, 4 consecutive mornings with lows in the 50s. It's been some time, I bet you, since we've had that. At least a couple months. I bet we had it at the beginning of June. It was a pretty cool start there to June. So I imagine we had it at least since the beginning of June. And what this drop below 50 degrees for dew point at the beginning of, June 9th to be exact. I think that last time we strung together a series of these lows in the 50s is probably around the same time, right around in probably the beginning of June, if I had to take a guess. But that would be an interesting statistic to learn as well. Certainly been some time, right? We have not had a stretch of some cool nights in quite some time here, coming off of that really just hot and humid stretch of weather. Mid-lower 60s in likely by Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday. Highs mid-lower 80s in the next week. But again, I think the best way to sum up what we see over the next week is seasonable temperatures for a lot of this, more tolerable humidity levels, and for a lot of it, likely dry as well. Yes, we can get some dry conditions into a lot of the stretch. How about the cloud cover? Well, a lot of sunshine again for the weekend, and I think a lot into Monday. However, by Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on next week, I do think we'll spot more cloud cover. I don't think it's a cloudy day. We can have some sun, but dealing with the abundant sunshine, I think we've got 3 more days. Not bad. But then we'll start to see more clouds spilling into the area Tuesday as well as Wednesday. And yes, this does coincide with an increase in rain chances. But that being said, we had today, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I think a great odds Tuesday. That's 5 days in a row here. I think great odds Tuesday we can stay dry. Yes, there's a slight chance. I can't say it's completely rolled out, but I think there's great odds that we can stay dry even going through Tuesday. By Wednesday and even Thursday of next week, it doesn't look like a guarantee. It doesn't. But I think there's a chance, at least a little better odds for something isolated. But that being said, we could have a string together here 5, 6, 7 days in a row. We could theoretically. Some locations can see 7 dry days in a row. I do then anticipate going into that following weekend. This is when coverage can start to pick back up. We go from what is very hit or miss to a little more widespread showers and thunderstorms. Those high temperatures at that point, more upper 80s, again, does start to turn more uncomfortable to unbearably humid. That's around next Friday to next Saturday. So we've got some time here near term that we're dealing with more, tolerable humidity levels, seasonable temperatures, and for a lot of the stretch, dry conditions for the next 3 days, even a lot of sunshine. So this is just, again, a gorgeous stretch of weather coming our way. Beautiful weather to make those outdoor plans going through the weekend. And, some of those maybe outdoor plans that haven't been the best to make, with the heat and the humidity, certainly in terms of dealing with, if you wanted to go camping, maybe have a campfire, these warm, muggy nights have not made for the best, right? Conditions for those campfires, probably sweating beside some of those fires, as warm as these nights have been. But boy, these nights ahead, last night, tonight, and tomorrow night in the 50s. Yeah, this is great weather for that, isn't it? Certainly great weather to have a campfire, go camping, maybe go for a walk, take a hike. I mean, this is gorgeous weather for a lot of outdoor activities as we go through the weekend. Certainly take advantage of it, make some plans, right? That following weekend, I don't think it's going to be as nice as what we're dealing with this weekend. I think that following weekend, it can be more on the hot and humid side with more showers and thunderstorms to dodge. So certainly going to good time to take advantage of the weather for this weekend. All right, everyone, let's catch up on some comments here. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Day to Day on this Friday evening. Austin saying good evening. Yesterday and today felt very good. Sure did, Austin. Felt so good to be outside today, but was surprised how windy it was since from last night and today. A bit of a breeze, even adding a little chill to the air, you may say, coming off of the heat and the humidity. Wind should start to die down throughout the weekend, but yeah, it's a little bit of a wind. We'll see a light wind, about 5, maybe up to about 8 miles per hour. So it'll continue overnight. Winds will die down some, but we have likely a little bit of a wind continuing into tomorrow morning as well. Joe, good evening. Thanks for everything you do. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate this kind words. Thank you for joining on this edition of Day to Day. Hello. Thank you. And thank you, Ella, for joining. Debbie says, beautiful today. Certainly was. Pool water was finally cool, Debbie says. And a lot cooler today. Certainly, yes. We felt it, right? And yeah, definitely a lot cooler temperatures today and even at the end of yesterday. And again, what we had for today is really close on repeat for Saturday and just a little warmer Sunday, but a lot of the same, really. Not too much differences from today into Saturday, Sunday in terms of how it's going to feel, right? Still low humidity, good amount of sunshine, highs, upper 70s, low 80s. Add a few more degrees, but that's not, a little noticeable, but, certainly that's not going to feel hot to us on Sunday by no means. And Carol, any rain soon? So hopefully we answered that for you, Carol, and breaking down those rain chances again. Early next week, I think great odds will stay dry. Tuesday, there is a slight chance, but I think there's better odds we stay dry than see a shower, thunderstorm. By Wednesday into Thursday, something at least isolated is possible. There's still some uncertainty going into the latter part of next week for rain chances. But I think it's going to be one of those situations where as the week progresses, the better the odds for some showers and thunderstorms. So, it can be more hit or miss Wednesday, Thursday. And like I said, some locations from Friday into next Thursday can stay dry. That's 7 days in a row from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think there's some locations that can stay dry during that stretch. And then by the time we get into Friday, next Saturday, Sunday, coverage can start to pick up and there can be less locations that end up staying dry at that point that we'll deal with likely a little more shower thunderstorm activity at that point going into that following weekend. Terry's asking how accurate are forecasts if they're over 9 days away. If they say there's storms, asking because Vacation Place says storms the whole week of the 10th. Yeah, take that with a grain of salt there. Once we get past even 7 days, the accuracy starts to fall off. If you're looking at anything past 10 days, especially that with that week of the 10th, yeah, I would definitely take that with a grain of salt. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it's just one of the situations. Unfortunately, wait a little longer with the forecast there, because you can, look at trends, which I do think, Terry, that we're trending warmer into that time period with respect to what we have here at the beginning of August. Yeah, I do anticipate into that week that those temperatures likely going to be warmer than what they are now. Yes, we can deal with a little more humidity, I think, during that stretch as well. But in terms of rain chances, that's I think the pattern can be a bit more active, but it's like that's really what we can do at that point. You can start to say, what can the overall trend be, right? Can it be more wet, dry, warm, cool? But specifics that far out, unfortunately, it's just going to be, that's like an impossible task, unfortunately, that far out. But yeah, I would say as it stands now, and Terry's asking for Tennessee. This is a trend even for I'd say even Ohio Valley, East Coast in general. The area of Tennessee is here in the Ohio Valley. In general, probably will end up dealing with some a warmer pattern in place going into that second week of August, going into the middle of the month, and I'd likely deal with some little more rain chances of what we're dealing with here at the beginning as well. So, with respect here to the beginning of August, probably a bit more wet and warmer, and likely a little more humid going into that second week. Unfortunately, I wish I could give more specifics, but that's probably what I'd watch for. And again, wait a little longer. A little longer, and then can start to dive into specifics in terms of dealing with specifics of rain chances and high low temperatures. Terry says their trends right now have been mostly rain and few nice days. And yeah, I mean, we're breaking that a little bit here. Again, this is more of a pattern that we're settling in right now at the very beginning of August. This is been about 2 months since we've dealt with dealing with this low humidity and this stretch of lower humidity and dry conditions. We saw that stretch of 5 days right at the beginning of July as well. So we're breaking it a little bit what we've been in as of recent, going through much of July. But yeah, certainly that has been the trend here as of recent, is that we can get what's a few days at most, and then getting back to more hot, humid, and wet weather. And yes, I do think with respect to what we're dealing with now, that second week is probably going to be warmer, more humid, and yeah, likely at least some rain chances. Again, keep in mind, right, these rain chances, it's just that, right? So a lot of the precipitation here in the Ohio Valley, Tennessee, the summer months, it's more scattered. So at least you got that going for you, Terry, in dealing that likely not going to be a complete washout, thankfully, into that second week of August. Carol says, thank you for all you do. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate that. And Renee says, glad it's cooler. Turn the air conditioner off for a while. And yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Finally able to open up the windows, let some more cool, comfortable air in. That's great. This is amazing, isn't it? I feel like every time I've been stepping outside here as of recent, it's just like almost a shock to the system, isn't it? It's just like, this can't be real. Like, am I dreaming? Why does it feel so cool out here? It feels amazing. It feels like transported to a different time or a different place, right? Like, this can't be real. Yeah, certainly. It's been pretty crazy. It's been almost a little taste of fall, huh? A little taste of the upcoming season. But yeah, we'll get back to more of the summer, like temperatures, humidity. We'll get back to summer. That's for sure going into next week, especially late next week. We'll get back to it. But here near term, just a little taste, just a little taste of that upcoming season. That's for sure. Certainly in these mornings with these lows in the 50s. Terry says, thank you, Francis. You're welcome, Terry. Thank you for joining. Wore jeans yesterday. Don't blame you, Terry. I don't blame you. Again, especially overnight. Having a campfire, may want to grab even a sweatshirt, maybe some jeans, a sweatshirt if you're out late at night having a campfire. Yeah, because it is going to be cooling off into these mornings. That's for sure. Some of these cool spots, those nestled into valleys, locations even north of Route 22, I think there can be some of us, while most of us in around the mid 50s, some of those cooler spots tonight could even get closer to 50. So yeah, almost chilly. You could say almost. I mean, compared to what we've been accustomed to, well, lows in the 70s, 60s, you can start dipping down closer to 50 and closer to the 40s. Yeah, it's a little chilly. It is. So we'll see. We'll see just how cool some of you can get. Again, if you're one of those locations that nestled into a valley, and you typically trend a bit cooler than the forecast, and watch out because you could be primed to get closer to even 50 going into tomorrow morning. So yeah, it's certainly a cool night ahead, and a lot of the same. Again, I think temperatures similar tonight as well as tomorrow night. Then we'll start to trend a bit warmer going into next week. At that point, Monday morning, back closer to 60, into the 60s likely Tuesday morning, and mid lower 60s at that point going into next Friday. And then we'll get back to more of the warm, muggy, likely that following weekend. As you can see, upper 60s, closer to 70 for a low, up mid upper 80s next Sunday. Yeah, that's when we'll get back to more of that likely, warm, muggy nights, more of the hot, humid afternoons, more of those scattered or hit or miss showers and thunderstorms. That's likely when we'll start to continue a lot of that again into that following weekend. Carol says, when will you be on again? So I will be back on Monday. So I will not be on for the weekend, but I will join all of you back on Monday. So we'll get to still rejoice on some beautiful weather on Monday. And of course, at that point, I'll bring you the latest on where we do stand with rain chances next week. We'll further map out that increase in temperatures, humidity, and further break it down. Likely have a lot better confidence on rain chances throughout next week by Monday, and we'll start to break down rain chances even further. And hopefully, again, that a lot of us could even stay dry Wednesday, Thursday. We'll see. The chance at least returns at that point, but I think there's a potential where a lot of us could stay dry. We'll see. Certainly not set in stone yet. It's still several days out before, a handful of days out before we get into the middle of next week. But yeah, certainly start to break that down with much more confidence throughout next week by Monday. So definitely stay tuned for that next edition of Nate at 8. Carol says, good. Thank you. You're welcome, Carol. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in this Friday edition of Nate at 8. I appreciate it as always. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. If you like the hot days, well, give it about a week and we'll get back there. If you've been kind of tired of the heat and humidity, this is your break, right? This is the weather. This is the stretch to enjoy it now for this weekend, early next week, before it does start to return late next week. But this week ahead is for you. If you want a break from the heat and humidity, it is upon us now. This is the time to take advantage of it for this week before it does likely return going into that following weekend. Thanks again so much for joining me. You can catch me coming up News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11 for the latest then. As always, the next edition of Nate at 8 coming up on Monday evening for that next edition of Nate at 8. Until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Enjoy that more cool, comfortable weather, and I'll see all of you on that next edition of Nate at 8.